Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How are you, my students? I hope that you're happy and healthy and ready for today's lesson, which will be the grammar. But before we do that, let's revise our previous lesson about crimes. Think of a crime story that you heard or read about in the news. Tell your partner about it, explaining the details. If you remember in the last lesson, we took some articles related to crimes and crime stories and how foolish they were. We took this first two men from Michigan. They were desperate, in need of money, and one of the men shot the other one. And we took a young man in Seattle wanted to go for a nice long drive with his best friend, who drank the sewage instead of the petrol, if you remember, which was also foolish. And we took Daniel Woods from Plymouth, England, decided to buy a new car, so he placed an ad in the paper. The man who got his car stolen, and the police found the car when they said that they wanted to buy the car from the person who stole it at the first time. And we took the woman in New York who just was leaving in a convenience store when a man seized her handbag, and the man was asked to identify the woman, and he mistakenly said, yes, Mr. Police Officer, this is the woman whom I stole the bag from. And this is the story from Indiana, USA. A man left his house early one morning to go grocery shopping, and once he found himself alone at the store, he decided to rob the place, quickly leaving his wallet. So these are today's objectives from our grammar lesson. The first one is to identify the action word in a sentence, the action word or the verb of the sentence. Use the passive to put the focus on the action. We usually use the passive to put the focus on the action. Use the preposition by to include who did the action. Rewrite active sentences as passive sentences. Use the past perfect tense correctly. Use the past perfect progressive tense correctly. So before we begin, we have here two sentences. The police accused the men of stealing a car. The police accused the men of stealing a car. This is, of course, the active. The passive here, the men were accused of stealing the car. If you want to add the doer, let's say, you can say by the police. If you want to add the person who did the action, you can write by, and then you put the person who did it or the doer by the police. So in the first sentence, the active sentence, you begin with the subject, then the action, the verb, the active verb, then the object. So subject, verb, object. It says here, the police accused the men of stealing a car. You can notice here the action accused is performed by the subject, the police. The police accused the men. So accused is a verb, and the doer of this verb is the police. The verb accuse is an active verb in this sentence. So in this sentence, the verb accuse is active. The second sentence, you can see the men change the change of place of the men. The change of place of the men from the place of the object to the place of the subject in the beginning of the word. The men were accused of stealing the car by the police. We begin by the men were accused. You can notice here accused is a passive verb. Passive verb. The men receive the action. The men receive the action. They are still the object. They are still the object, but in the passive form, they move from the object place to the subject place. Here the verb accuse is passive. Notice the men, again, as I said before, notice the men moved from the object to the subject position. It's just changing of position. It changed from the object position after the verb to the subject position before the verb. So you can notice from this example how to change the order of the sentence from passive to active. Mainly, you change the object from the object position to the subject position before the verb. So let's begin here with the passive. We use the passive to put the focus on the action rather than who did the action. So the main use of the passive form is to let you focus on the action itself rather than the person who did the action, or as I said before, the doer. The passive is formed with be, any tense, be, am or is or are or was or were, plus past participle. So it's verb to be, any tense used according to the situation. Is it present? Is it past? Is it future? Then we add the past participle of the verb. Let's take some examples here. The crime was, this is a past tense, of course, of the singular. The crime was committed early in the morning. The crime was committed. Was committed. So now we are focusing on the action rather than the person who did the action early in the morning. And in the passive form, you can add the person or not. It's your choice because the focus is on the action. You can say the crime was committed early in the morning by the criminal, or if you don't want to add it, it's up to you. The murder weapon has been found. The murder weapon has been found. So the most useful information here is that the weapon was found. By whom? We don't care, or we don't know. The main thing is that we know that the weapon has been found. The murderer will be brought to justice. The murderer will be brought to justice. The murderer will be brought to justice. Who will bring him? Of course, the authorities. But that's not our concern here. Our concern is the action itself. And there's a misunderstanding that we use the passive if we don't know who did the action. No, we choose the passive just to focus on the action itself. It doesn't matter if we know who did it or we don't know who did it. We use the passive just to focus on the action. To include who did the action, if you want to add more information, who did the action, we use the preposition by. You say the burglar was arrested by the police. The burglar was arrested by the police. If you want to add more information, who did the action, who is the doer here, the burglar was arrested by, then you add the police. Note, newspapers often use the passive to report crime stories. Newspapers usually use the passive to write their, to report their crime stories. What's more important in passive sentence? The action or the person or the people who did the action. Of course, as I said before, the most important thing in the passive is the action itself, the action. So find more examples of sentences in the passive. This is the article that we took before, Grayson, California, USA. The inmate, the impatient inmate who escaped from prison just one day before his release. Can you find any passive examples here? Let's check them out. The first one here is the past perfect, had been opened. He saw a gate that had been opened. Who opened the gate? We don't care. What we care about is the gate had been opened. And here we use the past perfect. And here is the present progressive. Newton is being pursued by a canine unit. Newton is being pursued. Newton is being pursued by a canine unit. This is a present progressive. Both of these are passive. When Alicia got home, the robbers had already left. When Alicia got home, the robbers had already left. We have two actions here. We have two actions. Alicia got home, the robbers left. Which happened before? Which happened before in the timeline? That's correct. Number one, the robbers left, then Alicia got home. So when Alicia got home, the robbers had already left. If you want to put it in a timeline, number one is the robbers left. Number two, Alicia got home. And you see here, had already left. This is past perfect. We often use the word already with the past perfect. With the use of past perfect, we usually or often use the word already. Jumping on to the next part, past perfect and past perfect progressive. We use the past perfect to talk about an activity. Again, we use the past perfect to talk about an activity or event that was completed before another activity or event in the past. So now you know that we have two activities. Both of them are in the past. We have two activities. Both of them are in the past. Just one activity finished before the other, or one happened before the other one. Again, we use the past perfect to talk about an activity or event that was completed, finished before another activity or event in the past. Again, we have two activities. Both of them are in the past. One happened before the other. Here we use the past perfect. For example, Reiko had forgotten to lock the door before she left the house. Before she left the house. Reiko had forgotten to lock the door before she left the house. So we have two actions here, leaving the house and locking the door, or forgetting to lock the door. Reiko had forgotten to lock the door before she left the house. The other example here, the criminal had already escaped by the time the police arrived. The criminal had already escaped by the time the police arrived. So we have two actions, the escaping of the criminal and the arrival of the police. We use the past perfect progressive when the activity was in progress at the time another activity or event happened in the past. So again, we're talking in the past. We have two events. One was happening while the other one was happening. So they are crossed here. Let's take some example. Juan had been getting cash from the ATM when he was mugged. Both of the events are in the past. Juan was standing. He wanted to withdraw money from the ATM. At that time, he got mugged. So we have two actions happened at the same time. The other one, the driver had been swerving between lanes when the police officer stopped him. The driver had been swerving between lanes when the police officer stopped him. Again, both of them are in the past. They just crossed. When he was swerving, the police intercepted and stopped him. So the both actions were intercepted. Find more examples of the past perfect. If you remember this article, in Malaysia, the people who stole 1.3 million and tried to escape with it in the small car but couldn't. So try to find the past perfect here in this article. Yes, it's very obvious. The car the robbers had stolen was compact car. The car the robbers had stolen was a compact car. Here's a language builder for you, more information for you. In many cases, we can use either the past perfect or the simple past or past progressive. However, the past perfect helps make the order of the events clearer. Some examples, you can use either the past perfect or the past simple, but if you use the past perfect, it will help clear the order of the event, the chronological order of the events. Here are some exercises for you. Rewrite the active sentence as passive sentence. So change the active into passive. This is the first one already done for you. Police found the suspect wearing a cow costume. The suspect was found wearing a cow costume. So number one, a 92-year-old grandmother chased and caught the criminal. A 92-year-old grandmother chased and caught the criminal. Focus on the object here and change it to the subject place before the verb. Yes, very good. The criminal, who was the object here, take him to the first of the sentence in the subject place, was chased and caught by, if you want to add more information, by a 92-year-old grandmother. Very good. The second one, the police discovered 54 money boxes in the suspect's home. Focus on the subject and the object and the verb. The police, again, discovered 54 money boxes in the suspect's home. Very good. 54 money boxes. The object goes to the subject place, were discovered in the suspect's home. If you want to add by the police, that's also correct. Number three, police found the suspect hiding in a trash can. Very good. This is very easy. The suspect was found hiding in the trash can by the police. Excellent. The jury found the suspect guilty of stealing $40,000 worth of bananas. Very good. You're getting the hang of it. The suspect was found guilty of stealing $40,000 worth of bananas. Last one, the police will fine him for littering the sidewalk. Littering the sidewalk, it means throwing trash. Very good. He will be fined for littering the sidewalk. This is future. He will be fined for littering the sidewalk. The other exercise here, write the newspaper headlines as full passive sentences. Here's an example: killer sentenced to die for second time. So the answer was a killer has been sentenced to die for the second time. Number one, a man accused of driving stolen car to court. So what's the answer here? Yes, very good. A man has been accused of driving a stolen car to court. Number two, man jailed for driving too fast. Man jailed for driving too fast. Yes, that's correct. A man was jailed for driving too fast. Number three, break-in suspect found asleep in house. Yes, it was very easy. A break-in suspect was found asleep in the house. Number four, a man found guilty of stealing candy from child is a man has been found guilty of stealing candy from a child. Number five, man arrested for not paying library fines. Man arrested for not paying library fines. So how to change this to full passive sentence? Very good. A man has been arrested for not paying library fines. The last one, businessman fined $35 for illegal parking. Very good. Some businessmen have been fined $35 for parking illegally. The other exercise here, combine the sentences to create one past perfect or past perfect progressive sentence. The first one is already done for you. Marco was walking down the poorly lit street. The second sentence, he was mugged. So we have two events. You have to connect them using the passive, using the perfect, past perfect or the past perfect progressive. Marco had been walking down a poorly lit street when he was mugged. Number one, the first event, Tanya was talking on the phone. The second event, she heard an intruder in the house. She was talking on the phone and then she heard. How do we? Very good. We say Tanya had been talking on the phone when she heard an intruder in the house. The second one, the first event, he was a trusted politician. he was arrested for stealing state funds. How do we answer that? Using the word before in the beginning. Very good. Before he was arrested for stealing state funds, he had been a trusted politician. Very good. Number 3, the first event, luckily I installed an alarm. The second event, the robbery took place. And use the word before in the middle of the sentence. How do we answer this? Yes, that's correct. Luckily, I had installed an alarm before the robbery took place. As you can see here, the past perfect helps us to clear the order of things happening in the past. Number 4, he was jogging. The second event, he got into his car. This is very easy. Before he got into his car, he had been jogging. And the last one, my wallet was stolen. This is the first event. The second event, I didn't have any money. And use in the middle the word because. Excellent. I didn't have any money because my wallet had been stolen. Here, complete the newspaper article with the correct form of the verbs. For some answers, both the simple past and the past perfect forms are possible. So let's read it together. Santon, Texas. John Wilkinson attempt to rob the Stanton drugstore yesterday. Yes, attempted. Here we use the simple past. Wilkinson spent weeks planning every detail of the robbery. Very good. Had spent. What about number 3? He buy a ski mask to cover his face. Excellent. He had bought. And right before the robbery, that's correct, he had taken the license plate of his car. Wilkinson feel confident that he planned the perfect robbery. 5 and 6. Very good. He felt confident that he had planned the perfect robbery. The robbery itself went off without a hitch. Continuing, the problems began when Wilkinson, tried to get away. Wilkinson to his car. Very good. Ran to his car. He had left it parked and running in front of the pharmacy. That's correct, tried to get into the car, but the door wouldn't open. Wilkinson discovered that he make an incredibly stupid mistake. Very good. Discovered that he had made an incredibly stupid mistake. He had thought so much about the robbery that he locked his keys in the car by mistake. That he had locked the key in his car by mistake. Look at the picture on page 23 in your book. Look at the picture. Make up a story about it. Include passive, past perfect, and past perfect progressive sentences and answer these questions. Number 1, what had the man been doing earlier in the day? Why had the police officer pulled the car over? Do you think the man was arrested? Why or why not? So open your book to page 23 and answer these questions. And with that, we reached the end of the lesson. Thank you very much. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك. أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم.